With that, again, thank you everyone for joining us today for GCAN Summer Webinar Series. We apologize for the technical difficulties. Some of us are using new platforms trying to get attached here. But I'm going to go ahead and introduce Mike Lee, and then Mike is going to introduce one of our secondary presenters, Travis. Mike serves as the Gulf Coast Branch Chief for the U.S. Geological Survey and the Oklahoma-Texas Water Science Center. And he's worked for USGS since 2007. He has also served as the Coastal Science Coordinator and the Water Quality Specialist for Texas. And before joining the USGS, Mike actually worked as a research scientist at the NASA Johnson Space Center Earth Observation Program. He was adjunct faculty within the University of Houston system, and he also served more than 9 years as an officer in the U.S. Coast Guard. Mike has also been a longstanding member with the GCAN Regional Association, and he previously served on our board of directors. And he and Luke Travis, who Mike will introduce, are presenting a project called Expansion of Ocean Acidification Monitoring in the Gulf of Mexico and Development of a GCAN OA Monitoring Network and Data Delivery Approach. This is a Galveston Bay and Tampa Bay pilot study. And Siobhan, we can now see the slides. They are in notes mode. If you could turn them over to presenter mode on this screen. And if we're ready, Mike, if you and Luke are ready, I'll let you go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, thank you. That was perfect. It was almost like we planned it, the timing just right. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much for this opportunity to present this science. As Kim said, my name is Mike Lee. I have been working on this with Kim. Kim, I went back and looked for it, and you and I started kicking around this idea to expand ocean and coastal acidification into Galveston Bay in April of 2018. So this is a project that is 7 years in the making, and I guess that shows that sometimes persistence definitely pays off. But I'd like to start by thanking GCAN again for this opportunity and helping us with expanding this this network. So next slide. I'd like to start this. I'm not sure who's all on this, but I wanted to give just kind of a brief overview of who we are, of the U.S. Geological Survey and what we do. So the U.S. Geological Survey is a federal government agency. We are the research arm for the Department of the Interior, with our primary focus being understanding pretty much everything earth science. We're unbiased and non-regulatory. Our mission is collecting data and providing science for the federal government. We are divided up into 5 primary mission areas, including the core science systems, which most people know the USGS topographic maps that are published, ecosystems, energy and minerals, natural hazards, and then the group I work with, the Water Resources Division. What's really unique about this project, though, is not often do programs or projects within the USGS cross multiple mission areas. And this is one of those really cool, unique projects where both natural hazards, our office in St. Pete, our Coastal Science Center in St. Pete, and the Gulf Coast Program Office within the Water Resources have kind of combined forces and combined the strengths of each of our programs to really develop this network. Next slide. So a little bit more about the Water Resource Division mission. Our mission is to provide reliable and impartial information that is needed to understand our water resources in the nation. And we actively promote this and give this information to the decision makers. So 2 of those sub-bullets of the mission area is to protect and enhance water resources and also to contribute physical and economic development to the nation's resources to benefit our current and future generations. And I really believe that this project meets both of those kind of criteria within our mission. So this this ocean acidification network across the Gulf really hones in on our specific mission area. Next slide. So the water quality research that we do within the USGS is completed by the staff here and includes both short-term and long-term monitoring. But how we operate is a little bit different than a lot of other federal agencies. Our water quality studies are usually completed in cooperation with state, regional, and local partners. So our studies address those issues that are needed by those partners. And we work with other federal agencies like Army Corps and EPA, but we also work with state agencies here out of our office, like the Water Development Board and the GLO, or even other entities, small nonprofit entities like Galveston Bay Foundation or HARC, the Houston Advanced Research Center. And I bring up a number of these partners because this project is not just a project that is kind of being funded from one agency. It is, actually, next slide, please. It is actually a cooperative effort from a number of agencies. We're leveraging the program from a number of sources, a number of programs like with the Galveston Bay Estuary Program and HARC, Galveston Bay Foundation, and very much the Water Development Board and Texas General Land Office. We're leveraging a number of separate projects to piece together a larger program. And so this is really one of those opportunities where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. We wouldn't be able to do this alone. Hold on, later there. Sorry, something popped up on my screen. So the USGS will integrate data from water quality monitoring that we're doing in a number of programs to kind of come up with this one network of this project. Next slide. But our main partner in this, of course, is our counterpart in St. Petersburg Coastal Marine Science Center. We've been collaborating with the St. Pete to establish this network, and the idea was to have two similar stations, almost identical stations, one on the east coast of the Gulf and one on the west, and so that it would give us an opportunity to have both this spatial comparison of ocean acidification parameters. Also, we're leveraging experience. We're getting the training on the carbonate chemistry and the sampling that Tampa has been doing for a long time, but also leveraging our experience with telemetry systems and collecting that real-time data. So we're very excited about this project. And at this point, to kind of go into some of the details of what we're doing here in Galveston Bay, I'm going to hand it off to my colleague, Luke Travis. And Luke is a hydrologist here within our center and will be serving as the primary project chief for our component here in the Galveston Bay system. So I'm going to allow Luke to introduce himself and kind of take it over from here.
All right, thank you, Mike. If you want to go to the next slide. All right, so we're, like Mike said, we're very excited to talk about this project and share some of the progress that we've made so far. So to start things out, I just wanted to give some general background to Galveston Bay for those that may not be too familiar with the region. Galveston Bay is the 7th largest estuary in the United States. It's actually the first largest in Texas. And with the Port of Houston that's within Galveston Bay, it's actually the 2nd busiest port in the nation by tonnage. So you can kind of imagine just how much traffic goes in and out of Galveston Bay. The bay itself covers approximately 600 square miles, and the average depth of the bay is about 6 feet, which is fairly shallow considering its size. And Galveston Bay has 2 primary tributaries, the Trinity River as well as the San Jacinto River. Next slide. So I won't go too in depth on ocean acidification. I know that most people in here have a pretty good background on that, so I won't bore you with all of the details there. But I do wanted to bring up that ocean acidification, while it's primarily driven by elevated CO2 levels in the atmosphere, coastal acidification is much more regionally induced and has much more localized processes. Some of these processes include freshwater inflows, coastal upwelling, and eutrophication. All of those can drive localized coastal acidification, and Galveston Bay sees some of that acidification through those processes. Next slide. So one of those that I mentioned that is characteristic to Galveston Bay is eutrophication. Due to the agriculturally intensive region surrounding some of the tributaries, as well as the Houston's major population density, this leads to a higher concentration of nutrient runoff, which can cause eutrophication, which is the process of those nutrients feeding more biological activity, and then that biological activity increases oxygen consumption, which leads to more CO2 concentrations in the seawater. Next slide. So another process that happens within Galveston Bay is the rainwater runoff. Rainwater typically has a lower pH and a higher concentration of CO2. And so when you have these large scale rain events and flooding events, it typically can cause or it can lower pH and cause acidification in the bay. Galveston Bay is especially vulnerable to tropical cyclones. So this region often experiences flooding events. And so one good example of that is post-Hurricane Harvey in 2017, the amount of rainfall it added to the bay doubled the acidification of the bay. It added more than 17 cubic kilometers of rainfall into the bay. That's more than 5 times the volume of the bay. And so if you look at the satellite imagery from NASA on the right, just how extreme some of that runoff can be. Next slide. So why does this matter? Why do we care about the acidification of Galveston Bay? Well, shellfish are a very ecological and economically important species to the bay. Economically speaking, approximately 70% of all oysters harvested in Texas come from Galveston Bay. It's a very big industry for Texas. 27% of white and brown shrimp and 30% of blue crab annual harvest also come from the bay as well. These shellfish rely on carbonate within the water to build their shells and strengthen their skeletons, and acidification reduces calcification and enhances the dissolution of their hard structures. Next slide. One species that I want to draw attention to in particular is the eastern oyster. I talked about in the last slide how they're very important to the economy and the local fishery, but they're also very important to the water quality of the bay as well. Oysters filter about 50 gallons of water per day per oyster. So that's a ton of water, and these oyster reefs, they provide a habitat for over 300 different aquatic species. So they're very important to the ecosystem. The past few decades, eastern oysters have been under an increasing amount of stress. The harvest in 2004 was around 22%, and since then, from 2007 to 2016, it's dropped to 8.7%. So ocean acidification has been one of these factors that has caused these oysters to struggle and limited the success of some of the restoration efforts. If you look on the right, you can see this is a good map to show the general regions of the oyster reefs throughout the bay. And we're going to get into this map a little bit more and how it fits into the scope of our project in the next couple slides. Next slide. So I wanted to talk about the current state of ocean coastal acidification monitoring in the Gulf right now. There are only three out of over 200 estuaries in the Gulf of America that have coastal acidification continuous monitoring. So not very many. Tampa Bay is one of those that we've talked about, our partners over at St. Pete. On the right, this is their data collection platform, and they have all of their acidification equipment submerged at that site. The other two sites are the Mission Aransas Estuary and coastal Louisiana. And with this project, ours will be the fourth site in the Gulf, and it'll be the first for Galveston Bay. So we're very excited about that. Next slide. So one of our number one objectives that we had in this project was to identify a monitoring location that would represent the typical areas for the shellfish growing regions. So if you look at the map here on the right, we have overlaid those oyster reef locations. That's that pink color that you're seeing. And we wanted to pick a site that was either in or in the vicinity of these regions so that we could address water quality around these vulnerable areas. So we had looked at different places along the bay. For example, on the east side of the bay, that point that sticks out is Smith's Point. We had talked about that, but there's just not enough infrastructure on that side of the bay. While in Eagle Point there is, and it's much more accessible. So we think we found a really great spot for this monitoring location. It's also a previous water quality site, so we're fairly familiar with the infrastructure in the area and the accessibility of it. Next slide. Our next objective was to figure out what instrumentation we were going to be deploying at this site. We knew that we needed continuous monitoring of ocean acidification, and we needed that equipment to be able to quantify the temporal variations of carbonate chemistry in Galveston Bay. And so, like Mike talked about, in December, we went to St. Pete's USGS office, and they were kind enough to show us the ins and outs of how to operate and maintain this equipment. They also showed us all the details for discrete sampling carbonate chemistry parameters. So we want to thank them for all the support they've given us. It's been a huge help in order for us to emulate a site like they have in Tampa Bay. Right now, we're currently in the process of purchasing the equipment. We're essentially waiting for approval, and hopefully in the next few months, we'll have hands-on on that equipment. Next slide. So I wanted to briefly give an overview of the two primary sensors that we'll be using at this site. First, we have the Seabird Scientific CFOX, which is a combination of the CFET pH sensor and the CTG plus dissolved oxygen sensor. As you can see on the uppermost picture on the right, that combination of both of those of sensor packages. The second sensor we'll be using is the CO2 Pro Oceanus. And this device, the CO2 Pro, measures partial pressure of dissolved carbon dioxide using infrared detection. And again, we're very thankful that St. Pete's was able to kind of guide us through how to get this equipment set up and how to get calibrated and how to properly maintain them. Next slide. So now that we had decided on our location being in Eagle Point, Texas, we had to find the proper infrastructure to house all of our equipment. So what ended up happening is we were able to get in contact with the local property owner of the property in dock, and he was kind enough to allow us to put all of our equipment on there. So we're able to come to an agreement in order to keep that. So we're very fortunate to have this spot, and we think it's going to be perfect for our needs. But one of the big challenges that we initially ran into when we were deciding how we were going to deploy the sensors was at St. Pete, they have all of their instrumentation submerged underwater, and it stays there. In order to clean for fouling or any type of servicing of the instruments, you have to dive down and simply do it that way. Now, with our water, as you can see, it's not quite as clear as Tampa Bay. So we knew right off the bat that with the turbidity and just the general visibility of the water, it was not going to be feasible for us to service our site the same way. And we're not able to remove the sensors from the water either because the calibration process takes days every time we remove it, so we lose days of data. So we knew it had to stay submerged and had to be accessible. So the concept that we came up with, as you see the picture of my Yeti cooler on the dock, it will look something like this. We have a flow-through type system. This beautiful clip art that I drew at the bottom is the way it's going to work, a simplified version. We have the water that pumps in from the surface, and it fills this chamber, and it's going to be at the same time pumping out as well, continuously filtering and cycling water. So we're going to have the CFOX and the CO2 Pro in that chamber, and it's going to collect data on the hour, every hour. And we want to also, we have to give credit to GCAN because this whole idea and concept was inspired from what they have in the Mission Aransas estuary area. They were the first ones to do this, and that was really how we knew that this was going to be even feasible and possible to begin with. So we really wanted to give credit to GCAN. Next slide. So another part of this project is going to be our discrete sampling. We'll be sampling in order to validate that continuous monitoring data. And so we decided on 4 sites that we'll be sampling at. The first site is at Eagle Point, the site that I just showed in the last slide. So we're going to be sampling right there at the instrumentation. And so we selected 3 other secondary sites. One of those in Trinity Bay. Now that location is still a bit undecided, but it's going to be generally in that region in Trinity Bay in the north. We're also going to have a site in East Bay and a site in West Bay. So if you look at the map, we kind of have that similar oyster reef overlay again. Our main objective of deciding on site locations was to sample at areas that were in or around the oyster reef locations to again get that water quality right there where those ecosystems are vulnerable. So this is going to allow us to start exploring proxy monitoring in the bay, and we can essentially tie those secondary stations back into the data that we're receiving at Eagle Point. We're also going to be leveraging the Texas Water Development Board agreement. All of these sites are already pre-existing sites that we have water quality equipment on, measuring temperature, specific conductance, and pH. And so it's already infrastructure that we have funding through that agreement. And so it's going to work great for us to service those sites and sample while we're out there. Next slide. So a little bit more on the discrete sampling. The sampling will occur approximately every month at each of the sites. So of course, with weather issues and other logistical challenges, we may have to be flexible, but that's the initial idea, is that each month we'll collect a sample at each of those 4 locations. The samples that we'll be collecting are pH, nutrients, dissolved inorganic carbon, and total alkalinity. And then we'll also have a multi-parameter sonde as well that will collect measurements of salinity, temperature, and dissolved oxygen. All of these samples will be shipped to St. Petersburg Coastal Marine Science Center for analysis, and we'll also be sending the nutrients to a contract lab. Next slide. So some of these objectives are kind of further along in the project lifetime, but objective 3 is for us to develop an approach for incorporating coastal acidification data into the USGS National Water Information System, as we like to call INWIS. INWIS is the USGS federal repository that we use to store all of our publicly accessible data. This approach will involve standardizing this process as well as automating data integration into INWIS. Next slide. For our 4th objective, we'll be exploring different data logger and telemetry system options, both hardware and software, to find cost-effective methods for collecting sensor data. The goal is to ensure that the output can be seamlessly integrated into data management systems used by federal agencies, GCUS, and other regional associations. We've currently acquired the TX325 satellite transmitter and the CR1000 data logger, and Zuli's been hard at work to program that data logger to be able to log all of our new ocean acidification equipment. So we're making good progress there, and we're excited to get that equipment out there and start getting our data back. Next slide. Objectives 5 and 6 sort of bleed into each other. For this project, we'll be supplying the first ever coastal acidification continuous monitoring data for Galveston Bay. And all of this will be made completely accessible to the public. We'll also be working closely with GCU's data management in this process, which sort of leads into Objective 6 of us incorporating the publicly accessible links to the existing GCAN website platform to view all of our coastal acidification data. And lastly, part of our more long-term goal down the road is to eventually create a framework for outside agencies to be able to store their furnished data into our repository in order to make essentially one large database for ocean coastal acidification data in the Gulf. Next slide. With that, that concludes our presentation. Mike and I would be happy to answer any questions. Thank you. Also, Zuli Lucena is our supervisory hydrologist too. She is on the call as well.
Thank you, Mike and Luke. I believe with this platform, and Marcus, correct me if I'm wrong, if you have a question, please type your question into the chat or indicate that you have a question, and then I believe Marcus can unmute you when it's your turn, and otherwise Shaban will be reading questions for us. Great presentation, gang. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Shaban, are you able to monitor the chat?
Yes, I'm here and waiting for questions.
While we're waiting for people to type questions in, Mike and Luke and Zuli, I do have one question, and I know we've talked about this a little bit. Can you discuss the potential for non-federal data collection telemetry to perhaps be incorporated into the NWIS system in the future?
Sure. Yeah, this is Mike. Yeah, that is something that the USGS does. We call it furnished data. And so there is an opportunity for outside agencies to allow NWIS to host outside agencies' data. It is something that we have done for select agencies, and the requirements for that are ever changing. And so the first step is, quite frankly, for the USGS to learn how do we get our parameters in that system. But then that provides what we like to call the framework or the blueprint for other agencies to provide that data. And the advantage of that, of course, is then it's hosted at a federal site where it is publicly available to all, and it will also guarantees that it meets the same qualifications and the scrutiny of the data that is provided by the USGS. So everyone, if we find that roadmap or that framework to do that, then we know that all that data that is in that system is apples to apples, oranges to oranges, and it's met the same kind of qualifications across the board. So that is something we will be exploring. I do think that's probably, obviously later in on the project.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Shaban?
No questions in the chat right now. I think that talk was really good and gave us a good frame of the beginning to the end to the middle of all of the work that is going on in the Gulf. And so, yeah, no questions in the chat so far. I think it was pretty clear.
We are very early in on this process. We're very excited about it, and hopefully, as this project progresses, that we would be able to provide some updates and give some more information about the actual data that we are collecting.
Very good. And I think, Mike, just one of the other benefits that I'd like to just emphasize here is, it's really fantastic that we're able to also do the discrete sampling in conjunction with some of the other water quality stations throughout Galveston Bay. Remind me, but I think some of those actually collect dissolved oxygen as well. salinity, temperature. And so, I think the other hope here is that we can eventually use those data to help develop proxy models for acidification in other parts of Galveston Bay as well. So I believe we'll have the data over time to do that, which is also a little unique. Not everyone has the ability to do that. Not all of these bays have that kind of advanced water quality monitoring station system. So that's exciting. I know
It's
Leticia.
definitely thanks to our partners at Water Development Board and GLO. We've been working with them for a number of years. Their primary objective has always been water temperature and salinity within the bay, but our work with the Galveston Bay Estuary Program has allowed us to potentially add additional water quality parameters on that, and then this program also allows us to do that sampling. I think it would be really unique that Trinity or Galveston Bay is really divided up into it's one bay system, but each, like East Bay is very different than West Bay, is very different from what we call the Trinity Bay, the Upper Trinity Bay. And so we're hoping that our Sentinel site at Eagle Point, which if you went back and looked at that map, is located right in the middle of the Galveston Bay complex, and then our proxy sites are scattered throughout the other bay, the West Bay, East Bay, and Trinity Bay. I think it's going to grant us an opportunity to really explore the differences in those. And at the same time, it worked out it worked out that those sites, those proxy sites where those buoys are located, are really close to those major oyster production and collection platforms. So everything aligned, the stars aligned on this project for us, and so we're excited to see where the results come.
Yeah, and I think I'm also very excited about trying to make telemetry options a little bit more accessible. I know, other people want to have sensors out and have had sensors out, but just haven't had any options for telemetry. So hopefully this will make telemetry a little bit more accessible for our Gulf partners as well. So Jinping, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, well, thanks, Mike and Luke. This is a really great presentation. I'm so happy that you guys are setting up this station in Galveston Bay. And one comment I'd like to make is, you may be already aware, TCEQ has been monitoring the entire bay, at although a lot less frequent. They have the quarterly measurement at some of the stations in Galveston Bay. So I think it may be useful in the long run to tie in their measurement, even though their pH is a different technology. As a sensor, unlike the these high precision OE sensors, but still may be useful. They monitor pH, also measure total alkalinity, among a lot of other parameters. So the other resource you may want to tap into is the marine program at the A&M Galveston campus. So there are modelers and also scientists. Actually, I'm sitting at workshop with some of them here in Santa Barbara. So we're having this 3-day workshop. They have a lot of expertise and also historical data as well. So yeah, great talk. Thank you very much.
No, excellent point. Excellent point. And we do work. I think everybody on this call knows it's a pretty small community when you get down to it, and so we do work with A&M Galveston quite a bit. But that's an excellent suggestion and great point. It goes back to where I was saying earlier. I think in order to get the most robust data set and to do the most, it takes more than what one person or one agency can do, and leveraging the strengths and the data collection of multiple agencies really what it's going to take to advance the science. So.
Very good. Thanks, Jinping. Any other questions in the chat, Siobhan?
We have a comment from Jorge who just wants to thank Mike and the USGS team for the presentation and the key parts that this work will have in the Western Gulf.
Thank you, Jorge. We appreciate your support.
Very good. One last call for any other questions or comments. And Shaban, let me know if something pops up in the chat.
I think that's it.
Okay, if not, we can give everyone about 20 minutes of their day back. So we really appreciate everyone for attending today. If you have any questions that you think of after the presentation, feel free to email them to directly either to Mike or Luke or me or Shaban or Jinping, and we will get them to the right person for answers. Thanks again, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.